Hey everyone, this is Rob. I am the tutor for Advanced Brand Management, ABM401H, with the Institute of Marketing Management. I'd like to welcome you to this class and like to say hello to you since you've never dealt with me before. So this is a recording of today's class, which I'm going to upload and then you guys can listen to. There's 6 slides in total. And I'm just going to run through, so it's going to be, I'll spend 10 minutes per slide, so it's going to be about an hour-long presentation. So whilst you're busy cooking dinner or, lying in bed, you can listen to this. However, I try not to drone on too much. It's going to be filled with ums and ahs because it's not scripted, so it'll sound like a lecture, but that's fine. But my job is not to, excuse me, replace Dr. van Veekelena, your lecturer. It's really just more to supplement and to help bring the information to life. So it's to turn it into visual cues or to create examples that will help you to understand the work better, and really just to apply what you're learning. So it's also a repeat of the lecture, and it's not designed to be. So we're just going to be touching on concepts briefly, but overall, as you know, branding is a really important part of marketing. It's central to marketing. And one of the best definitions that I ever saw was branding is the glue that holds all marketing together, as you guys well know, because you are now postgraduates, you're fourth-year students, and you're honor students. So you know most of what I'm going to be telling you anyway, but I'm just here to refresh and to give you a new perspective and maybe just to color in some details for you guys. What I also wanted to say to you just is marketing definitions in textbooks in terms of branding are usually rather deficient. They will say something like it's a name, term, sign, symbol, that is a representation of a company, etc., etc. I really like the thinking of Scott Bedbury in this respect. He wrote a book about 25 years ago, it's really old, called A New Brand World. Not a brand new world, but a new brand world. So obviously switched them around, which is quite clever. And in it he speaks about branding being the good, the bad, and the ugly. And really what it is it's everything. It's everything to do with an organization, and it really is the heartbeat of the marketing function, because we are brands. Brands are us. We are just surrounded by brands. And I've been having these debates with students in first and third year for the IMM students doing the BBA in marketing or the BCom in marketing. And we've been chatting, and I've been throwing questions at them and saying, and they're meant to be thought-provoking. They're not meant to be controversial or disrespectful. But I asked the students, I said, so is an ideology a brand? Can it be a brand? Is an idea a brand? And then I asked the question, I said, is Islam a brand? With all due respect, one of the students in the class is Muslim, and I said, how do you feel about this? And he said, no, he thinks it's very interesting and it's just really application, which is great. So this is an apolitical, a-religious class, not designed to, set an agenda. It's just to get you guys thinking about things. And I remember when I was lecturing at Vega, there was a student there who was very involved in his church, and he was battling to come up with a topic for his mini dissertation that he had to do for his honors. And I said, why don't you do Jesus as a brand? And he questioned and said, is that disrespectful? And is that, irreverent? And I said, no, it's Jesus was iconic. And again, I'm not promoting an agenda or anything, but he was an icon, and the thing is, he is a representation of, we have these very strong ideas of what he looked like. If you look at the Madonna and Child that was mentioned in The Monuments Men, etc., etc., we have these very strong, sort of iconic notions of what he looked like. Maybe thanks in large to the Catholic Church. Speaking to the students this week and saying that Christianity is still the biggest religion on earth, 2.2 billion people, followed closely by Islam with 1.8 billion people, and Islam is growing, Christianity is shrinking. So what are the implications of that in terms of branding? And so what I really want you to think about as we get started on this thing is think about brands outside of the concept of, just it's a product. A brand is a chocolate, or a brand is a car, or a brand is, branding can be anything. It can be a person, it can be a country, it can be a city, it can be a concept, it can be an idea. And let me use this information then to segue into this first slide over here. So you can see the image on the left is a guy, a sailor, and he's busy smooching the lips off of this nurse. It's a very famous photograph. It was taken on the 14th of August 1945. And so my first question to you is, what associations does this image conjure up in your mind? And you might say, well, it looks like, a romantic embrace. Maybe they were getting married. So she's a nurse. You can't really see that. Although I didn't know she was a nurse until I started studying the photograph. He's a sailor. You can see by the hat on his head and sort of, the bit of the collar that you can see. But this photograph was taken, and you might say, well, it looks like romance. It looks like love. You can see in the background, it looks like it's New York. It looks like it's, it could be in the 40s because they have this sort of the outfits. Look at her shoes, look at her dress, etc. So it looks like it could be the 40s, and it looks like New York. And you'd be right in all of those perspectives and respects. It is New York. It is the 40s. It was taken on the 14th of August, 1945, and actually made the front cover of Life magazine. And so then the second question I've asked is, do you know the history of this photo and its iconic status? And they actually interviewed these two people about 12 years ago before they both died, and spoke to them about the photograph. And it was a spontaneous thing. He grabbed her, he smooched her, and she interpreted it as a thank heavens the war is over, thank heavens it's done, it's that kind of thing. And that was sort of the spirit in which it was done. And it was just a celebration. It was the first of many celebrations. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure you are very aware, after Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed on the 6th and 9th of August, not October, 1945 by the Americans. Obviously, they dropped the atomic bomb, the only nuclear attack in history, a planned nuclear attack. And after that, on the 14th of September, of August at least, my apologies, the Japanese surrendered unconditionally because the Americans said it must be an unconditional surrender. We will decide whether or not to keep your emperor. And then the official instrument of peace, which was the peace treaty, and the signatories to the end of the war, was officially signed on the 2nd of September 1945 in Tokyo Bay on the USS Missouri. And that officially ended the war exactly 6 years and 1 day after it started, when Hitler invaded Poland on the 1st of September 1939. So this photograph was taken before that on what is known as VJ Day, Victory over Japan Day, by a photographer who then put it on the front cover, and it was just as a celebratory thing. But some people might now say, but it is a very pro-American, very pro-white, very sort of patriarchal, because look at the guy, he's kissing this woman, etc., etc. And I'm not sure if you guys know the controversy, the brouhaha that has erupted around this picture, which we're going to discuss in a moment. But first, what I wanted to ask you, what brands do you think, or do you link this photograph, if any? So you might say, well, it looks like a sailor. You can see, very much the idea of the sailor. She looks very 40s in her outfit, so it reminds me of the 40s. The 40s as an era could be defined as a brand. It looks like New York. It looks like it could be a bridge in the background, or maybe it's not a skyscraper. It looks like a bridge to me, though. I can't really see all that clearly. Is that the famed Brooklyn Bridge, or one of the bridges that links Manhattan to the burbs on Long Island, or on the mainland and on the New Jersey side? So what is it? Does it remind you of the United States? Is it a very American thing? Is it iconically American? So what associations do you make? And as you'll know from your study guide, that brand associations is one of the 4 elements that ARCA notes as being important for brand equity, which we're going to discuss in a little bit of detail today. So I really want you to think about that and ask yourself what it is. And then the brouhaha around this photograph, just in a nutshell, because we're getting to the end of our first 10 minutes, and I want you to spend 10 minutes on each slide, so we don't go over an hour, is that this photograph was this guy who was kissing this woman. It was an unsolicited kiss. It was not with consent. He just grabbed her and just smooched the lips off of her. And the VA, the Veterans Association, has now said, well, we think that this photograph is inappropriate because if you look at the controversy that erupted in 2023, last year, with the guy from Spain who kissed the captain, I think it was, of the women's soccer team that won the Women's World Cup last year. Excuse me, I'm just hiccuping. And yes, there was huge controversy and this enormous amount of backlash on social media and how could he, and it was put in a lot of pressure, and eventually he resigned. So the VA now said, this is a bad photograph, and this because it's unsolicited, and if you speak to the people who were involved in the photograph, they of course said it was just an innocent kiss, it just happened to be. So let's move on to the next slide, which is also the same. We can talk some more. Okay, so before we speak about capturing the zeitgeist, related to that, so the VA wanted to, for all intents and purposes, ban this photograph and have it removed from, sort of public scrutiny and public society, and there was an enormous backlash in America, huge, major backlash, and they were very upset, and they said, this is the spirit of America captured on film, which leads to what we're going to speak now about capturing the zeitgeist. This is the spirit of America. It is the embodiment of the American spirit. How dare you mess with one of the most iconic images in the world of, the euphoria that the whole world celebrated when the Second World War ended. And even the White House press secretary, I can't remember her name, weighed in and said, we did not condone the removal of this photograph. And the VA then made a decision to reverse that and said, no, we're not going to take it down. We will leave it, obviously, because it is quite iconic. But Americans were up in arms, and saying, how could you, how dare you, etc., etc. And I think the poor VA representative was just trying to be, sort of conciliatory, considerate of, the new sort of thinking around things around, permission and around, being inclusive, etc., etc. And of course, there was this huge backlash which they weren't expecting. It's a difficult one because you can say, well, it's very much a double standard, and you can argue, and maybe you do. You can say this photograph is a representation of what was of 1945. My personal opinion, I actually weighed in and left an opinion on the YouTube video about it because it's been on CNN, NBC, ABC, BBC, CBS, Al Jazeera. Everybody's picked up and said, it's this, and in an era where we're now seeing a shift away from Western values to a more sort of centered global feeling where it's not just West dominated, although it's still very West dominated, and a movement from the global North away to a reckoning from the global South and an awakening of the global South. And for example, you see what happened with BRICS, and the expansion of BRICS, and of course the war with Russia and Ukraine, and those kind of things, and the change in the narrative around Gaza and Israel or Gaza and Palestine. People are no longer just, including the Americans, supporting Israel unconditionally. They're saying, no, there needs to be a reckoning and an accounting for why it is that, the United States, Israel has killed 30,000 people, in exchange for, the 1,300 people that were killed. And we're not condoning any terrorist attacks. What Hamas did in Israel was criminal and abhorrent. But what Israel is now doing to Hamas in Gaza, in part of the Palestinian territory, is equally criminal. And as you know, Naledi Pandor in Parliament said, why is it, or not necessarily Parliament, when she was with the International Court of Justice, and of course they've been speaking and she's been delivering speeches, saying, why is it that Putin is a war criminal, but Netanyahu is not? So there is a move away from this Western dominant, Western white narrative, and so. But getting back to this photograph of here, what do we mean when we say capturing the zeitgeist? So zeitgeist, I'm married to a German, so the correct pronunciation is actually Zeitgeist, Zeit being time, and Geist being ghost. So literally the time ghost, or as we call it, the spirit of the times. So what do we mean when we capture the zeitgeist? We are embracing the spirit of the times. And I would argue with you and say to you that any brand that is able to capture the zeitgeist, that's able to capture and embrace the spirit of the times, is going to be a brand that's going to be remembered. It's going to be associated with that era, and it's going to be probably fun. Not always necessarily. I mean, you could argue that Hitler captured the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times, the zeitgeist, and he is not fondly remembered. He is remembered, though. I mean, he is iconic in a very negative way, but he is iconic. We're going to speak about that a little bit later. But What does any of this have to do with branding? Think about a song, guys. Think, we have songs that have captured the spirit of the times. Think of something like Hotel California. California itself is a very strong brand, sung about a lot. The states, Los Angeles, not so much. I can think of two songs where Los Angeles sung about. The one is Do You Know the Way to San Jose, where Dionne Warwick says LA is a great big freeway, which is hardly a glittering commendation. And the other one is California Dreaming by the Mamas and the Papas, where they say, I'd be safe and warm if I was in LA. But if you compare and contrast that to New York, where this photograph is taken, New York as a city is celebrated and venerated as a brand. It was Milton Glaser in 1977 who created the I Heart, the red heart, New York NY logo that has become iconic, associated with New York, and many cities have hijacked it. I've seen an I Heart JHP, an I Heart Durban DBN, an I Heart CPT probably. I can't think that I've seen that, but I know that lots and lots of cities have hijacked that, and that was a PR campaign to boost New York, because when it came out in 1977, New York was really grappling with high crime rates, and so they were trying to bolster the city's image. But what does any of this have to do with branding? Well, do we associate the brands? Do we negatively or positively associate Brand America, the VA, sailors as a brand, as a brand class, nurses as a brand class, positively or negatively with this photograph? And this leads us on to a piece of theory, Crystal's R squared of branding. So what we can say here is that, so Andrea Crystal is a marketing communications academic, and what she says is, when we have a relevant brand, so it's relevant to our lives, relevant to what we do and who we are, what we stand for, okay, in terms of what we need it for, we use it. So I've been speaking to the first and third year students about what is marketing, and I always say to students, guys, let's simplify and make it all very, very, very simple. What is marketing? Marketing is the creation of a product, service, idea, experience, expression, notion, ideology, whatever it is that people want or need, and you can argue the difference between those. And the second part of marketing is telling people that you have this product, service, idea, experience, whatever it is that they want or need. Tell them that you got it, and they will use it from you. So the thing is, a brand is relevant to our lives if we have need of the brand, or if for some reason it somehow seems to resonate with us as well. So why is it R squared and not R plus R? Because when we multiply instead of add, so if I add 6 plus 6, I get 12. But if I multiply 6 by 6, I get 36. So it massively increases the functionality if we multiply instead of just adding. So when we have a brand that is relevant to our lives and that we can relate to because we need the product or service, but the brand also resonates with us as a person for whatever reason, because we like what it stands for, because it works efficiently, etc., then what happens there is we have a very powerful brand. We have top-of-mind awareness or brand salience. We have the ability to recall a brand in a buying situation, which means you're going to reach for that brand. Or you went in there and you went and said, oh, I want to buy this. I want to go buy, Colgate toothpaste, or I want to go and buy, a specific type of tuna, like maybe John West. I think it's called John West tuna. Or I want to go buy Simba knickknacks, whatever it is. So when we have need of the product and it resonates with us, or resonates with those we care about, so children, for those of you who've got children, they can often influence parents' buying behavior. That's what Disney knows very powerfully. That's why Disney is such a powerful brand, because they know that children have the ability, through nagging, to wear down their parents' resistance, and in so doing create, a demand for a product or service that parents will give into. Think of Barbie last year. Barbie was, and Barbenheimer, the whole sort of, Oppenheimer and Barbie sort of juxtaposed against each other, and people flocked off to go. There was merchandise everywhere. It really resonated, especially with sort of young girls. So I had a student last year at a different college that did a study of Barbie. Very, very interesting. It was for one of her final assignments that she had to submit. Was a presentation. So what does it mean to resonate with a brand? And what does this have to do with brand equity? So we've kind of answered those questions already, but resonate, when it's something that just agrees with our value system. It jives with us. It's something that we don't mind associating ourselves with. Okay, and because of that, what does that have to do with brand equity? Well, Arca will explain to you that one of the 4 elements of brand equity is brand associations. Okay, so what we associate with that is, so there's something about the brand. That's why, I mean, I was speaking to the first and third year students, not so much the first year students, because maybe they're younger. They weren't all that keen, but the third year students, excuse me, in class, hiccuping here, excuse me, the third year students were, oh, Apple is wonderful, and we've all got Apple devices, and they all brought their little Apple laptops to class, and I say little because they're, smaller, they're sort of neat, compact, and they're Apple iPhones, and oh, Apple, iPhone 16 is coming out soon, and they were also, and I said, why are you guys so with unfettered loyalty to Apple? Like, oh, Rob, it's got these amazing features and functionality, and I said, gosh, when we first got cell phones many, many moons ago, and this is dating myself, there were these big bricks that used to stick into, cradle into this, this big, heavy, charger, and you should take it with you. I mean, practically weighed you down if you could even find a thing to attach it to your belt, whatever it was. They were just these huge, enormous things, and they had limited functionality. You could barely send an SMS. So, but Apple as a brand really resonates with students, or the third year students. And you might say, well, Rob, for me it's Samsung, or it's Audi, or it's BMW, or it's Merck, or it's whatever. It's McDonald's, or it's Burger King, or it's brand America, or it's brand Australia, or it's brand London, whatever it is that resonates with you. And if you have a brand that resonates with you, and it's relevant in as much as you would like to use it in your life, or you aspire to use it, that's a very powerful brand. So today, obviously, we're focusing on brand equity and brand resonance, that we were talking about these things. And so that really is, in a nutshell, what it boils down to. Let's move to the next slide. So as we go through this over here, we've got 4 photographs over here. As you can see, you've got Cyril Ramaphosa, we've got Julius Malema, we've got John Steenhuisen, and we've got Jacob Zuma. So Cyril, obviously, is the head of the ANC, Julius, EFF, John, DA, and Jacob Zuma is the new Umkhonto party. Sorry. MK party is not Umkhonto Wesizwe, it's Umkhonto. I think it's, yeah. Anyway, so there we go. So, and very interestingly, they all dominate in terms of color. So the ANC, you could argue, is yellow. Julius Malema and the EFF is red. The DA is blue, and Jacob Zuma's new party is green. So it's very interesting that the 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, are all dominated by the 3 main political parties. So which of these brands resonates with you the most, and which the least, and why? So when we say which of these brands, is Cyril Ramaphosa a brand? Absolutely. Is Julius Malema? Very much so. Is John Steenhuisen? Yes. Is Jacob Zuma? Yes. Okay, and you may have opinions. So you might say, Cyril Ramaphosa, head of the ANC, I don't admit this to people because people think I'm insane. I like Ramaphosa in as much as he was instrumental in helping South Africa transition from apartheid to democracy. He was there with Rolf Meyer. They helped to come up with a new constitution. And I've seen photographs. If you've been to the Apartheid Museum in Johannesburg, you will know that he was. There's big panels and displays about obviously our transition to democracy, and it's a wonderful museum. If you haven't been, you definitely need to go. And when you come down to my neck of the woods, I am a native Joburger, born and bred, and 3 years ago I semigrated and moved to Durban. And I love Durban. It's the coastal lifestyle is wonderful. It's so nice. It's so chilled and relaxed. I'm currently, whilst I'm speaking to you, looking out through the window over the beach or over the sea. It's a bit of a windy day, but it's a beautiful day. And so those kinds of things, really, Durban is a wonderful lifestyle. It's not as powerful a brand as Johannesburg, but it's still, it packs a wallop or two, and it's also growing very fast. But anyway, so what does this have to do with these things over here? So if you go to the Apartheid Museum extension here, the Nelson Mandela capture site near Howick, it is inspiring. It will really lift your spirit and make you feel better about South Africa if you ever needed it. So I'm saying that over there. So I like Cyril Ramaphosa because he was involved in helping to transition South Africa. And Rolf Meyer made a very, very interesting observation. He said, democracy didn't just rescue black people, it also rescued white people. I thought that was profound. I knew some people would disagree, but I know that if the DA starts getting more votes, some people get nervous and they say, oh, it's going to be a return to apartheid. There can never be a return to apartheid. It's impossible. It would never, ever work. And who would want it anyway? I don't think anybody wants it. I remember many moons ago, they had a referendum where FW asked people if they and this was still for the white population, asked people if they wanted to continue with reforms to lead South Africa towards democracy, or if they wanted to stop reforms and return to apartheid. And 70% of the white population voted yes, we want to see reforms. We think we need to move towards democracy. So there is, if you were ever worried or nervous, there is your shining beacon of hope that, it's because nobody wants to return to that arcane stuff that was just so, it was just, it didn't work. So I quite like Cyril Ramaphosa, but not enough to, and I'll share this, I'll give you a little insight, not enough to vote for the ANC. They have enough votes. And also, if you look at, what's happened in the country, whether you think it's positive or negative. Julius Malema, so who resonates with you? I must be honest with you, you can probably hear that I'm white, not that it matters, but anyway, I'm not particularly fond of John Steenhuisen. I don't know that I'm going to vote for the DA on the 29th of May, and I hope, guys, you're all going to vote. Please exercise your democratic right that your forefathers and everybody fought so hard. Please exercise your democratic right and go and vote, and go and, put an X next to a name, whether it's a perfect name, because then you've invested in the future of the country. So I don't know that the DA is going to get my vote. I have voted for him in the past. I haven't only voted for the DA. I don't like Helen Zille particularly. I think she's quite whiny. I don't like John Steenhuisen because I think he's also quite whiny. I don't know what was wrong with Musi Maimane. I really liked him. I thought he was a fantastic leader. I quite like Herman Mashaba. But anyway, so which of these brands resonates with you the most or the least, and why? Okay, then Jacob Zuma. For me, I'll always think of Gupta Gate, and I'll always think of Mshini-Wam, and I'll always think of, the Nkandla fire pools. So that's a very negative association for me. But that's me. You guys may say, oh, he's amazing. Maybe you're Zulu. Maybe you think, oh, gosh, is that the lot we have to choose from? Let's not vote. But please go and vote, guys. Even if you vote for a small party, at least because some politicians are actually hoping you won't go and vote, because then we can maintain the status quo, which is not a good thing. And then the question I have to ask you is, how does their association with their parent brand affect that brand's equity? Okay, and you can see over here, so I've mentioned, so equity, ARCA says there are 4 elements of equity. That's what AQUAL is. So brand awareness is the first one, perceived brand quality is the second one, brand associations, and then brand loyalty. Now, I don't believe in brand loyalty. I think that brand loyalty is a lie. I think it's a farce. I think it's a joke. You may disagree with me. And one of the things with this class is I want you to get to the point where you can be critical thinkers, which you already are, but I want you to think critically about what works and what doesn't, and what you agree with and what doesn't. You may say, oh, Rob, you're talking absolute rubbish. I know that I'm brand loyal. I mean, for example, there are certain brands. I would say the only brand that I'm loyal to is myself, my own brand, and each of us is a brand, especially if we choose to position ourselves and market ourselves as such. Okay, so each of these men over here, and they happen to be men, there's a distinct lack of women over here, which is a bad thing. Okay, but Cyril Ramaphosa is a brand, Julius Malema is a brand, John Steenhuisen is a brand, Jacob Zuma is a brand. Okay, so they have brand awareness, and you may say, well, I'm association. So the association that you have with them towards their brand, does Julius Malema make you feel negatively or positively towards the EFF? Personally, for me, some of the stuff that he said that's very spurious, which is, quite, like, for example, nationalizing, the banks and the mines, that kind of thing, and the redistribution of property. And of course, kill the white people, so that obviously what makes me feel very negatively about him, because I own property, and I'm like, well, please don't come and take my property away, because it's where I live. So, and then of course, the whole, kill white people, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, which really is just a struggle song, but the connotations around it. So those kind of associations, are those positive? For some people, they are. Some people say, but that's the way it should be to redress the imbalances of the past. How can we get to the Union of South Africa in 1910, okay, and we have no representation of Africans whatsoever? They're completely removed from the creation of this new country, the Union of South Africa, which led to, you can see again, your PESEL factors, political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental. They all have a knock-on effect, and they're drivers that lead to change. Okay, they initiate change, or they prevent change, or they enable change. But as a direct result of that, okay, then we have the South African National Congress, African National, is the SAANC, I'm not sure. Anyway, but it became the ANC. So the ANC started in 1912, and of course that was a direct result of the fact that they were not getting representation. They went to Saul Plaatje, and some of those people got on a plane, not a plane, it was a boat in those days, a boat, and they went across to London to go and speak to the representatives who, because South Africa obviously was part of the Commonwealth, and they got ignored. People would turn a deaf ear to them, and they got ignored. So they said, well, how are we going to, take back and establish, this thing, because colonialism has denied us. And then, of course, 1913 comes along, and the Land Act happens, and of course, 13% of the land is relegated to to black people, and the other 87% is given to white people for farming. And so you can't really blame Julius Malema for saying we've never redressed these injustices over the last 100 years, and what are we doing about it? So, and some people resonate with that, and you can't. So it's about respecting other people's beliefs. I don't necessarily agree with everything that was said. I've had these debates with my third-year students. We've had some very heated debates in class, which has been great. So I want to really encourage you guys to think carefully and to to determine critically what you think of these concepts. So ARCA says brand awareness, perceived brand quality, brand associations, brand loyalty. Keller in his book, if you read your textbook and if you look at the articles and stuff, says that one of the problems with brand equity is that it has multiple definitions, which makes it very, very difficult to define. And it's all sort of vapid and wishy-washy and all over the place. And but what it boils down to in a nutshell is brand awareness and brand image. That's basically what Keller's saying. So what is the image around? And of course you can relate that to ARCA. And then of course I really like, as I said to you previously, Bedbury. Bedbury says that branding is the good, the bad, and the ugly. So it's everything. So everything affects brands, and of course we now have this sort of counterculture movement, which is not actually counterculture, it's very true, about branding from the inside out. So branding is controlled, the messages are controlled by the marketing team, by those who are in charge of controlling the messages, versus outside in, where we have outside influencers coming in, influencers, social media enablers, etc., who are influencing the brand from the outside in. So one of the examples that I shared with my students at in third year was when Lyft, the airline, started flights from Johannesburg to Durban, so the JNB-DUR run. When they arrived at Durban Airport, King Shaka Airport, it was, they do a traditional water cannon salute. So what it is, they spray water across the fuselage of the plane as it flies through over there to celebrate its arrival. And of course, Tongaat, which is a suburb of Durban, which is very close by, had no water at the time, because obviously Durban had the floods, and of course some water infrastructure was damaged, and there was this huge brouhaha and outcry, hue and outcry online, and they were saying, how can you, as King Shaka Airport or Lyft, waste water when you've got no water? And then Lyft quickly came back and said, no, but please note it was grey water. It was a grey water thing. So I don't know how true that is. I don't know if they're using grey water, to fuel fire engines in terms of water if there's a plane crash at King Shaka, heaven forbid. So I don't know how, but that was of course the backlash. So you can see how do you control that brand image? They were trying to do something good, and what came out of it was something bad. Same thing with the VA photograph at the beginning, the one we discussed on the previous page. Okay, so the guy from the VA was trying to do something good. This photograph is not consensual. This woman never gave consent for this man to kiss her. And it's in this day and age, it would be inappropriate to take the photograph down. Thinking he's doing something good, and the backlash was, how dare you tinker with and mess with American history and the spirit of America? How dare you? So very interesting, guys, the way branding works. And it's very difficult to control these messages sometimes. Okay, we're a little bit over, but let's move on. Okay, so I want to discuss this with you, but I'm not going to discuss it with you all today. So I call this Thomas's myth. I would be Rob Thomas. This is me. Thomas's myth of brand loyalty. This is the brand awareness and usage flow diagram. So my argument to you is that, speaking about ARCA and brand loyalty is a delusion. The very best a brand can strive to achieve is brand preference, followed by brand insistence. So you can see over here, the brand starts with either you're aware of the brand or you're not aware of the brand. If you're aware of the brand, you either reject the brand or you accept the brand. If you accept the brand, you either use the brand or you don't use the brand, or you no longer use the brand. If you do use the brand, you either have light use or heavy use. And if you have heavy use, you either prefer the brand or you insist on the brand. So that's sort of the flow over there. And you can see. So this over here is a great way to establish, to put together a marketing strategy, determining where you should take your brand based on where it is along this flow chain. Okay, so if people are not aware of your brand, the first thing you need to do is create a marketing campaign that's going to create awareness. You need to put something together to say, hey, have you heard of whatever? And that is no mean feat in this day and age, because we are saturated with marketing messages. And that is very, very difficult, but that's what you have to do. I mean, I remember, if they introduce new brands in the past, think of some of the brands from the old days, long time ago. I mean, I personally thought it was such an overhand advert, but there was an advert for Cremora that was sort of very, very, very famous, where the man was making a midnight cup of coffee and he couldn't find the Cremora in the refrigerator, and he said to his wife, there's no Cremora in the refrigerator. And she said, it's not inside, it's not inside, it's on top. And he said, it's not inside, it's on top. And looked over there, of course, there was the Cremora on top of the fridge, and the payoff line was Cremora at the top of the coffee creamers. And the reason why is because Cremora doesn't need to be refrigerated. It's sort of standalone because it's filled with chemicals. So, and people talked about that advert incessantly. They loved it, thought it was amazing, and that's the kind of thing you want to do, because you're creating this enormous amount of brand awareness. So, that is how you take a brand from unaware to aware, and there are many ways to do this. That happened to just be one of the ways. I also remember a couple of many years ago as well, they had an advert. My uncle thought it was fascinating because he lived in Pietermaritzburg, which of course is known as Maritzburg for short. And of course, it was a Cadbury's lunch bar advert. In one stage, they had the Scottish tartan look and feel that used to be included in the packaging. So it was, sort of red with a little bit of, sort of like a dark green color. And of course, they did an advert, and it was a youngish, smallish black guy who was, throwing logs, because this is something they do in Scotland. It's like a log throwing thing. And he does it really, really well. And of course, he puts the Scotsman to shame. And the Scotsman looks at him and says to him, you're one of the McIntyres or something like that. And the guy says, no, I'm not a McIntyre, I'm a Macatini. He says, are you from Edinburgh? He says, no, I'm from Maritzburg. And of course, everybody thought this was hysterical, and they loved it. And of course, everybody's talking about lunch bar and this funny advert. And did it lead to an increase in sales? I have absolutely no idea. But there we go. That's what you want to do, guys. You want to create sort of experiences. Or that is why Malema, for example, says these controversial things, because he knows he's going to get exposure in the press. He'll say, let's nationalize the banks and take away everybody's property. Headlines. Oh, how can we? And the thing is, he's getting headlines. So does that translate into votes? Well, the EFS on 10%. We'll see if they do any better. Predictions are they're going to do better. We'll see. But has it, helped him to become an established brand, and can he therefore charge a premium? Apparently he's very wealthy, because obviously he gets funding from government because he's a member of parliament, and then also he probably does private speaking engagements, or he gets, money given to him from people, etc., who want to support his cause. So it certainly helped his brand to be that controversial. Now some people say, no, that's too front and center for me, too much controversy. But look at Madonna as an example, as another human brand, as a person brand. I saw a thing of her the other day where she was doing something on TikTok, and she's had all these implants in her face. And it was just horrendous. I mean, so is she getting the headlines? Yes, but for all the wrong reasons. They're saying, look at this 65-year-old woman who's trying to act like she's 35 or 25, and she's just making an idiot of herself. And she is like, well, it's exposure. It's exposure. So you may argue the extent to which, this is good for Madonna, this is good for Julius Malema. But anyway, so that is at the beginning. But if you then go, so that's where you either have awareness or non-awareness. If you go to the very end, guys, you can see, for example, let's move along just very quickly. I will reject the EFF brand as an example because, excuse me, I don't like what Julius Malema stands for. I might go into the voting booth, and reject the DA brand as well when I go and vote, because I don't particularly like what John Steenhuisen stands for. He moans too much, in my opinion. But if I were to accept it, then you can do research, and you can see that they ascertain why, If I accept the brand, I don't have a problem with the brand, why don't I use it? Is there a better brand on the market? Or why did I used to use it and stop using it? So I need to go and do research and find out why. But if I do use it, I'm a light user of it. Of course, you want to convert it into a heavy user. Or if I am a heavy user, then I walk in and say, I would prefer to get some Cross and Blackwell mayonnaise. But if they haven't got Cross and Blackwell mayonnaise, I will buy the ShopRite no-name brand because it's okay. It's an okay substitute. Or you walk into a supermarket and you say, I will only buy Cross and Blackwell mayonnaise. If they haven't got it, this is insistent, I will go without. Excuse me. Does that translate into brand loyalty? You might say yes. I would say, well, until a better mayonnaise comes along. What happens if we start getting American mayonnaise? Then we get Hellmann's mayonnaise and, whatever. The different types of mayonnaises from America that start coming in, or from Britain. And you find a mayonnaise that tastes better. Are you still going to use Cross and Blackwell? Because I'm loyal to Cross and Blackwell mayonnaise. No, of course not. So, does brand loyalty really exist? I don't know. You can argue the pros and cons, which relates to our next slide over here. So, is this diagram true, or is it rubbish? Excuse me. Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat. Okay, so does brand resonance increase the likelihood of its use? If a brand resonates with us. Okay, so going back to the mayonnaise example. Does Cross and Blackwell resonate with you as a mayonnaise? I personally find it too tart. I prefer a sweet mayonnaise, not so much a tangy mayonnaise. So I prefer the salad cream. I like the Nola salad cream, but I have no problem using ShopRite, no-name brand, because it's the cheapest. So for me, price is important. So that will force me or cause me to use the product more because it's cheap. That does not equate to loyalty. If then another brand comes along, they make a Be Well canola-based mayonnaise. It's got no egg in it. It's eggless, but it still tastes like mayonnaise. Sometimes that's on special and it's cheaper than the shop. Us use that because it's cheap. So what I'm going for is the price. So, but you can argue the point. Maybe you are somebody who, and of course I've challenged the students in the classes. There's a young lad who sits in the front of Marketing 1, and he is insistent on Nike. He's like, oh, Nike. Like I said, well, hang on, you're not wearing Nike shoes. He says, no, but I've got Nike shoes. I don't wear them. That's too hot for Nike shoes. I said, okay, so whenever he comes to class, I always tease him and say, wear your Nike shoes. I thought you were brand loyal to Nike. No, it's too hot for shoes. I'd rather wear flip-flops or whatever it is. So I always tease him. But guys, you need to ask yourself, if you resonate with a brand, are you more likely to use it if you can afford it? Maybe you are hugely fond of Ferrari or Lamborghini, but, so it resonates with you. Can you afford to use it? So is it relevant to you? Maybe you say, well, not yet, Rob, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Dubai, one of those used car lots where people have just abandoned cars, and buy myself a Ferrari for cheap. My cousin did that. They lived in Dubai, and he bought himself a cheap Ferrari and drove around with a Ferrari, for a while because he loved it, because he was really, he absolutely loves Ferrari. So, but how is this relevant to brand equity? Well, guys, you need to ask yourself the question as well. Where does resonance fit into brand equity? If we have a look at what Bedrick says about the good, the bad, the ugly, or what Keller says about brand image and brand awareness, or what Arca says about brand quality, brand associations, brand awareness, and brand loyalty, where does equity fit into this over here? Okay, and where does this fit into resonance? So, personally for me, when I look at why a brand has much equity, I would say one of the factors involved in it, and I just saw a visual, excuse me, before I recorded this class today, of, I think they call it the Golden 7, the Miracle 7 on the US Stock Exchange, which are worth $13 trillion on the US Stock Exchange. And the US Stock Exchange is the biggest stock exchange in the world. I think it's valued at $31 trillion. And the Golden 7, these 7 wow brands are are bigger together. They're worth more value than the entire Chinese stock market. The Chinese stock market is $11.5 trillion, and these 7 brands. And they are Apple, I don't know all of them off by heart, Google, Meta, which obviously is Facebook, Nvidia, which I think is a thingy brand, a financial brand, Tesla, those are 7, and I can't remember the other two. I need to go back and have a look at the visual. But guys, you can see over here, so brand equity, what they're valued at. Does a brand have more equity? Is its equity increased? Is its value increased? Would we purchase more for the stock? Would we purchase more for the company? Would we buy more for the company? Okay, if it was more valuable because of what we perceive it to be. Are those companies very valuable? Yes, they're very, very valuable. And if you have a look, this is even what sunk the SAA deal. So Takatso was willing to pay the South African government 3 billion rand for a 51% stake of SAA. And the government has now said, no, but SAA is now again on the ascendancy because we're actually up and running again. The brand's actually worth 5 billion rand. It's worth, so we want to charge you extra. And Takatso said, thank you so much. You can take your SAA and you can keep it. So they've now lost the deal. So SAA stays firmly. And you can say, was it a political move because the government wants to keep their fingers in the political pie in terms of SAA? Or was it purely an economic and financial move? And I must say as well, even though I'm pleased that SAA is no longer getting funding from the government because it was a bottomless pit, what it has done is it's actually damaged brand Johannesburg. You might say, well, Rob, how is that possible? And these, of course, are the brand associations. And again, how it's damaged it is that because SAA no longer flies as much, is there's less connectivity from Johannesburg. So Johannesburg's not as well connected to the rest of the world. And a well-connected city is a city that is powerful. So London and New York, London, for example, has the strongest connections. It is the busiest airport system in the world. About 130 million people travel through London because it's got 6 airports. Joburg's got 2, obviously, OR Tambo and Lanseria, and they work out together to about 20 million people. So the Joburg market is about 1/6 the size of London, but it's not doing as well as it used to. Joburg has now dropped from the busiest airport in Africa to the second busiest airport in Africa because Cairo has overtaken it again because of the loss of connectivity because of SAA. So even though I'm not crazy about SAA, it has actually affected brand Johannesburg because Johannesburg is a very well-known city. It's an alpha global city, very well-known, very prominent, and obviously the wealthiest city in Africa based on the number of high net worth individuals that live there, ultra high net worth individuals that live there, and of course the GDP of the city and the metropolitan area. And big, it's extremely big. So there we go. Whether you are a fan of Joburg or not, I was born there. I'll always be a fan of Joburg, but of course I also am very fond of brand Durban. Wonderful place to stay. Anyway, but there we go, guys. And I've asked the question here: brand loyalty or brand promiscuity? I'd say we're promiscuous. I will switch brands in a heartbeat if I know that I can get a bargain. So, for example, speaking about air connectivity, I usually fly Safair because they're cheap. But if somebody came along and offered me the same price and with the same convenience and number of flights of frequency, or cheaper, an even cheaper price, I might consider switching. If Air Zimbabwe offered the service, would I take it? No, I don't know how good their safety record is. But when we were in Thailand a couple of years ago, we actually flew Thai Lion Air, which is the same airline that a couple of years later crashed after takeoff from Jakarta. And I'm like, oh my God. And it wasn't the pilot's fault. It was because of the whole thing with the Boeing 737 MAX. So you can argue now, what's happening to Boeing's brand equity? What's happening because are people still resonating with the Boeing brand? There used to be a saying, if it's not Boeing, I'm not going. And then, of course, I remember when I was at university, they actually said Boeing was the name, or it's an onomatopoeic word. It's the sound that the engine makes when it bounces on the ground. Boing, boing, boing. So there we go. So that's what happens. That's what's called Boeing. But you can see, guys, it has this negativity around, and it's affected Boeing's stock price, by the way. So you can see over there, has it affected the equity? Absolutely. My aunt, who lives in the United States, she's American, married to my uncle who used to work for SAA. She's Hawaiian American. She used to work for Boeing. She is an aeronautical engineer, and she resigned a couple of years ago. She quit, she retired, and she said, it's not the company that I used to work for. So you have to think about that, guys, in terms of, would you stay loyal to a brand if another brand came along that was better? And I can promise you now, you wouldn't. So you might say, well, Rob, that even applies in relationships. Okay, I'm loyal to my wife, I married her, I'm faithful to my wife. Sure, until your wife is 65, and your secretary comes along and she's young and she's in love with you and, she looks great and she's got a great body and she's, enamored with you because, whatever it is. And unless you're very loyal to your wife, which is a good thing. I'm not promoting, marital infidelity or being suggestive in any way. Many a man has strayed and decided to have an affair with his assistant. Okay, and then divorced his wife. Is that brand loyalty? Is that loyalty? No, I don't think so. So, are we like that? Are we promiscuous towards brands? Yes. We are, as long as the brand meets our values and our needs, we will use the brand. If it doesn't, we won't use the brand. But I want you to argue with me and say, Rob, you're talking absolute rubbish. This is why. Here's my evidence and here's my proof. Then I will gladly listen to what you have to say. So I listened to an e-book the other day, an audiobook actually, and this guy says, is there really a tribe? Or is it marketing wishful thinking? That's why I said prove it. Is there really a tribe? Is there a tribe of people out there, or are people so busy they actually don't care? They haven't got the time to worry about joining the Amazon tribe or the, Audi tribe or the Apple tribe or the, Alphabet tribe. These are all A's. Alphabet is like Google, whatever it is. I don't know. I don't know, guys. You can argue the pros and cons. I think loyalty is much less. That's why people say to me, I've got a loyalty program. I'm like, please call it a rewards program. When I speak to my clients, I've got, I consult to industry. I say to people, please call it a rewards program. Stop calling it loyalty, because people are not loyal to your brand, especially when your brand is so little. And that's the other thing. People don't listen when you have these consultations. And they're like, please listen to what I'm saying to you. I'm trying to help you. Yeah, and they don't listen. So they're like, oh, it's not good for your brand, but there's nothing I can do. I can't force you to listen to it. So those are all things you need to consider, guys, and keep in mind. Okay, last slide, last 10 minutes. I know you brought tears. Make yourself some coffee to stay awake. Okay, so here are logos. And of course, I was going to discuss this with you guys in class today, so you can see. Can you name each of these logos? The swoosh, the Bavarian flag, the golden arches, the lips and the tongue, the contour bottle, the star, the swastika, the fruit with a bite out of it, the rings, and of course the stars and stripes. Can you name each of those brands? So does a brand have high equity if its logo or an image that's associated with it can be recognized without its name? And I would say yes. The higher the equity, the more the brand can stand alone with just a logo, and you don't need to worry about its name and each of those. So you can have a look, guys. As your top left-hand corner, the swoosh is Nike. Bottom is Bayerische Motorenwerke, Bavarian Motorworks, BMW. And I should know it because I'm married to a Bavarian. Okay, so I've been educated and schooled on all things Bavarian. I've been told Bavaria is a superior state in Germany, and the BMW is a superior car. I'm like, okay, if you say so. I'm not particularly interested, but anyway. The golden arches, McDonald's. Yes, I've eaten McDonald's in the last month. The lips, the hot lips in the mouth is Mick the Mouth Jagger, so that's the Rolling Stones logo, for those of you who didn't know. Obviously, the Coke bottle is the contour bottle, and I specifically just used the Coke color so you would get that, but you can see. Very famous, guys. That bottle was invented by a bottling company on behalf of Coke, and the lengths that Coca-Cola has gone to protect and augment their brand equity, it is astounding. So does marketing work? Absolutely. Lord Leverhulme, many, 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 many years ago, said half my advertising works. The problem is I don't know which half. So you can argue the pros and cons of that. There we go, the TriStar of the Mercedes-Benz logo. Excuse me. Next, moving up to the top, the swastika, which is a symbol of Nazi Germany, the Third Reich, Hitler, the Holocaust, obviously, so all the negativity around that. And did you guys know that that sign and symbol is actually a Hindu symbol, or is it a Sanskrit? I think it's Sanskrit. I think it's actually an ancient Indian symbol that had nothing to do with Nazism and with the National Socialist Party, the Nazi Party, Nationalistische, Sozialistische, whatever. I can't speak German very well. I speak a little bit better than I used to. But there we go, guys. You can see for that over there. So think about the negative associations. And it never used to be. That symbol is not necessarily negative. We have associated it negatively. And when Prince Harry wore that on a shirt at a party that Kate and William were at, if you watch The Crown, he was lambasted. He's like, do we have a Nazi in the royal family? Are we surprised? Because they're all of German descent. In the Second World War, 1917, I think it was, the House of Hanover, which was the original name of the British royal family, because they were from the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, part of Germany. They were German, the House of Hanover. They changed their name deliberately to the House of Windsor because they didn't want to have these negative associations with being of German descent. And of course, Queen Victoria's cousin was Kaiser Wilhelm, and her other, not her cousin, sorry, her nephew. Her other nephew was, of course, Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. So those people who were all involved in that war were all cousins. So, I think it was George, the King of England, who was involved at the time of the First World War, and Kaiser Wilhelm were cousins. They were first cousins. They were directly related to each other. And they said it was just a war about families and about a family squabble, the royal families. And you can think, well, what about the millions of people who died because of a family squabble? It's just so pointless. But you can see there, guys, the negative associations around the swastika. Okay, when it's become people don't want to touch that brand. So when Harry wore that as a shirt at a party, people are like, this is distasteful and this is disgusting. I mean, you should really be more sensitive, to think about the associations with a similar, very, very, very prominent, symbol, but completely the antithesis of the complete opposite, which is the Magen David, or the Star of David, or the six-pointed star, which is the two triangles of the Jewish faith, and how that's used in the flag of Israel. How they used to use the triangle half of the star on the people who were in the concentration camps and that kind of thing. And very interestingly, you can have a look now in the controversy surrounding that over there. So Jonathan Glaser, who got up and won, I think it's Glaser, might be Glaser, I think it's Glaser, who won the Oscar for Best Documentary or Best Foreign Film. I think it's Best Documentary. I think it was a documentary short film on Gaza, and he said, I'm Jewish, and I refuse to allow the Holocaust to be weaponized by Israel in pursuit of their war of Holocaust against Gaza. And he's been flamed and lambasted for being insensitive to, the Jewish people, etc. But you can see the controversy that surrounds it. How does that affect the brand? Personally, for me, I think because of the changing narrative over the years and the moves to the global south, the war in Gaza has been very bad for brand Israel. Very, very negative for brand Israel. The United States is getting a bit fed up with the whole thing. Then Apple, we've spoken about Apple at length, is the next brand. Top right-hand corner is obviously the United States, the Stars and Stripes, like the name of their national anthem. And then, of course, the Olympic rings, which, believe it or not, is the second most recognized symbol in the world. You might say, Rob, what are the first and third? Well, I'll share with you. The cross is the first most recognized symbol in the world as a symbol of Christianity, and the third is the Superman logo. So when Superman's ripping open his chest, you can see the Superman logo. Very interesting because obviously it's old. It's 80 years old, I think even older, maybe 90 years old. It's like Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse is iconic, and of course now part of it, the original design's in the public domain, and of course Disney was having a fit about that and saying, oh, what are we going to do when the actual new updated Mickey Mouse goes into the public domain? Then it can be used by anybody. So that was a huge concern. But there we go, guys. Does a brand have high equity if its logo or an image can be recognized without its name? So take this back to brand resonance. Do any of these brands resonate with you because of their logo? Does their logo invoke or evoke an emotion in you? Make you think about it. I mean, I am very fond of McDonald's. It's unhealthy. It's too expensive, but I really like their chips. I like their Big Mac burgers. By comparison, I have family members say, oh, it's McKotz, because they say in German it's McKotz, it's McVomit. And they'll say it's more, it's healthier for you just to eat the plastic. Oh, not the plastic, sorry, the packaging. The paper wrapping around the chips, and the cardboard that surrounds the burger. It's more healthy. So some people don't like it. Coke, I'm a huge fan of Coke. Why? Why am I loyal, in inverted commas, to Coke? I personally feel that Coke is the nicest tasting of all the colas. Tastes nicer than Fanta, Sparberry, cream soda, and none of it tastes better than Pepsi. It doesn't taste as it tastes better than some of the ShopRite colas or the Checkers cola or the Pick and Pay cola or the Woolworths cola. Those don't taste as nice because obviously Coke protects the recipe. Now, I've also been to the world of Coca-Cola in Atlanta. I was very privileged to go there to the museum and the display, and Coke tastes different in different countries because they use different flavors. They not different flavors, sorry, they use different water. So Neville Isdell wrote a book about, taking Coke within walking distance to every person in Africa, because he was involved in Coke from Joburg head office, the Coke Africa division. And Coke tastes different in different parts of the world because of the water. Coke also tastes different in different containers, and as you notice, so plastic Coke from a plastic bottle is different from Coke from a soda can. You might say, oh, Rob, that's such rubbish. Well, when we have the discussion in class, when we meet again, tell me what you think, and tell me what you guys, if you guys believe me, or if you believe that what I'm saying is true, or it's complete rubbish. I don't want to convince you of anything or convert you into anything. I want you to be able to take the information from your study guide and from your research articles that you've had to read, apply it so that you can understand branding better, and then apply that information to your assignments so you can pass this course and go with your B.Phil honors, and go and make lots of money in industry. Because remember, if you are solving a problem for somebody in the marketing field, or if your brand solves a problem, creates a solution to a problem for another human being, that's how you make money, because it's an exchange of value. People will pay you to solve their problems, and the more people whose problem you solve, the more wealthy you become. Think of Elon Musk and Tesla. SpaceX is basically solving a problem for all 8 billion human beings, because it's going to take us to the next planet if we ever have to leave this one, because in 4 billion years' time, when the sun goes supernova, we're not going to have a planet to live on anymore. Quite frankly, I'm not interested in interstellar travel. I watch Star Trek, it's for fun. I don't want to particularly travel ever anywhere else. Think of Don't Look Up, where they all end up on a different planet and killed by, all the weird creatures there anyway. It's very satirical, so tongue-in-cheek, dark black comedy. But then also, think about, guys, Tesla. Tesla is cars, and people need to travel from point A to point B. So that's why, Elon Musk has sold. Think of Jeff Bezos. Amazon, A to Z, everything. So it's a global brand with global reach, and that's why he's a wealthy man. And then, of course, Bernard Arnault, who's now the richest man on earth. He's overtaken from Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos from Amazon. Is Louis Vuitton. Quite frankly, I don't know why you would pay 1,000 rand for a handbag, but I'm not a woman, so I wouldn't know. But anyway, some women are like, oh, Rob, you just got to try it; it's superior quality. Or is it just the name? It's just the logo, and you can walk around with bragging rights. So down here, obviously, I sometimes go to Umhlanga because we're in Durban, and I literally saw a woman there walking, one time with her Gucci handbag and her dog in the other. I'm like, okay, this is just so Beverly Hills meets Monaco, in Durban. I'm like, okay, that's weird. But anyway, but there we go. She was quite adamant she was going to walk around. And of course, so Louis Vuitton has the same thing. That's why Bernard Arnault, as I said, is a wealthy man. Okay. Why or how do the brands above resonate with you or others, or not resonate with you? As I said, for you, for example, for me personally, McDonald's and Coke resonate with me a lot. I like the Stones. I think they've done some great songs. I like Brand America very much. I'm a big fan of the United States. I think the Olympic Games is a wonderful thing. I don't care about BMW or Merck. I don't particularly care about Apple. I'm obviously opposed to Nazism and the swastika, and I don't particularly care about Nike. So that's me. You guys might say, well, Rob, this is whatever. And I really like Coke. It's not healthy for you, but it tastes very nice. Nothing nicer than a delicious cold Coke on a hot day. Oh, nothing more delicious. Anyway, guys, last point. How does this relate to your readings for today? That's the point I wanted to make. How does all this relate to what you had to read for today? And how does it jibe with you and resonate with you? And what can you do to apply it to your studies? So if I'm not mistaken, I did touch base with Helena. Your first assignment is on Twitter/X and how Elon Musk has damaged I hope I'm not giving away information that I shouldn't be giving away here. Elon Musk has damaged the brand Twitter by turning it into X and denuded the brand of all its equity in terms of tweets and the little birdie logo, etc., etc., etc. I have to completely agree with you, and I don't think that it was a smart move at all, but that is just my opinion. You guys may agree or not agree. But guys, you need to apply all of these things over here. Do people resonate with X, or has he made a mistake? I don't know. Do people resonate with Elon Musk? Do they find him offensive? And he is South African, and he's still, I've heard that he's very anti his father, and he's not terribly pro-South African. But he does still recognize and acknowledge that he is from South Africa, and he has said one or two things positively about it. So is that, how do you feel about Elon Musk? Does it make you feel positively or negatively about X? How does it resonate with you as a person? Would you stop using X because you don't like Elon Musk? Would you stop, going to, and there were people in the Second World War who said, I'm not joining the Nazi Party. And if they didn't, then they couldn't get work because you had to be a member, you had to have a number, the Nazi Party, in order to get work. So some people just joined because they needed to feed their children, put food on the table, but they didn't support the ideology. Anyway, we could go on, but we're already over our 1 minute time allocation. I don't want to make this thing too long. I could do a 2-hour lecture, but I'm sure none of you will watch it anyway. Thank you for your attention, students. It's been lovely chatting to you. And I look forward to connecting with you soon. I'll be in touch via email or on the portal, the IMM portal. Thanks so much. Have a good day. Take care. Speak to you soon. If you have any questions, let's chat soon. Thanks then. Bye.